You're listening to the Extra Point Show with Sal Capaccio and Sneaky Joe DiBiase.
And Josh looking to the end zone, fires that way, touchdown, Gabriel Davis, touchdown Buffalo, an absolute fastball from Josh Allen.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
All right, good morning. Not really new faces, but sort of new spaces. Sal Capaccio here, Sneaky Joe DiBiase. This is it, man. Good morning to Buffalo, worldwide, nationwide, however you want to look at it. You can listen however you want these days, right? We got on the air, WGR Sports Radio 550. We got your Odyssey app. We have your Alexa devices, all those kinds of things. So however you're finding us today, we're glad to be here. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, along with me, Sal Capaccio. What's up, Joe?
What's up, Sal? Let's have some fun. I think you've thought about that opening line before you walked in here. I'm just.
And I still did
hazarding
not
the
have
guess.
anything written down at all. In fact, true story. I walked in here today. This is a true story. I think I talked about this with you yesterday. We talked about the show a little bit on Sunday, actually. I walked in here today, saw our boss, Alan Davis. By the way, thanks, boss, giving us an opportunity to do this, along with so many people on the Odyssey, corporate, local side of things. And I said, the only thing I'm struggling with is, how do you open the show? Like the very first words out of our mouths are going to be very important today.
It's your first impression.
And do you know what he said?
Yeah. What did he say?
Say good morning. Okay, that's it. Let's go. Good morning. That's it. That's
good morning, and let's go. I like it.
We're ready to rock and roll. We are. So we're going to be here every day, every weekday, Monday through Friday. Bills talk, predominantly right now, of course. We'll never ignore the Sabres. We'll talk about them, anything else going on in sports. We're going to have a lot of fun. We have different segments. We'll have some guests throughout the week, all that kind of stuff. But this is your spot to go every day, 10 to 12, as it has been, for a bit of a different feel, as we'll be taking you along here every single weekday, like I said. And we're still going to be bringing you all the different elements that you need throughout your week, whether that's Bills, that's Sabres, and all those kinds of things. And I'll still be headed down to practice like today to tell everybody what's going on. My role doesn't change as the Bills beat reporter to follow along and figure out who's at practice and things like that. So I'm looking forward to it, Joe, and it's good to be here. It's good to be here today. And also it's good to be in studio.
Yes, it's good to be in studio. It's good to see your face actually in front of me, because so much remote going on in the last year and a half that it's good to be in here with you. And obviously to do the show with you is exciting for me, because I've been listening to you even before I started working here. So this is a dream come true to have this opportunity. And like you said, like your role down at the stadium is going to remain the same, and you will still be able to hear me on the nightcap at 7 o'clock for those that like to listen to me in the late evening. But different time slot, different vibe of the day. I don't know. I'm thinking about things differently. Maybe it's just because football is around the corner, and not necessarily that I'm talking into a microphone at 10 o'clock in the morning versus 7 o'clock at night. But I'm like, it feels like pregame to me. I think that's maybe what it is.
It is different,
I
right?
feel like
I mean, you normally do the nighttime, and now you're doing the daytime.
Right.
And, people who aren't normally used to your voice in this time slot, but they've heard you before, it is going to be a bit different. But for you, especially, to kind of shift that mindset, you're not really just wrapping up the day's news. You're kind of looking ahead to the day's news, right? That's a bit of a different change.
You're in the midst of it, really.
There's no doubt about it. So we'll talk about that. One of the things we really want to do on this show, caller engagement, social media engagement. We have a Twitter account, an official Twitter account. It is Extra Point WGR. Extra Point WGR. Follow us on Twitter. We'll have polls. We'll have questions. We'll have engagement there. And, of course, your telephone calls, 803-0550, 888-550-2550. For those familiar with the Extra Point Show, I normally host on Mondays, which I will still be doing. Of course, we will. I'll be here on Mondays solo. We're going to kick Joe out of the studio on Mondays just because we're going to get a lot of phone calls like we normally do for the Bills reaction. I take a lot of calls on that. We want to keep that rolling, man. We want calls here today, and we want to do that. So we're going to start right off with it and say to people, what we want you to call about today is honestly just how you're feeling about the Bills, man. Your prediction, essentially, for the season. And I don't mean, you can call up and say, Sal, 14-3, 17 games, remember? 15-2, 13-4, 9-8, whatever it is.
It's going to take some adjusting for that.
Right. Now, if you want to do that, that's fine. What we're really looking for today, though, is give us a call. How does the season end, essentially? Like, how does the season end for the Buffalo Bills? Is it all the way from a disappointment and not even making the playoffs? Dear God, please no. Is it they gave it their best try, got to the playoffs and got knocked out, didn't get past Kansas City again? Is it getting back to the Super Bowl, this time in L.A.? Is it a Lombardi parade? in Washington Square. I mean, we got a wide range here, Joe, but I want to hear from callers today and people today. How does the Bills season end?
803-0550 for that. I think that's you're fighting the urge here for me because I love to look ahead. I'm very quick to look ahead at things like that, and I've been obsessing over the Chiefs all off season, and this conversation is really a part of that. Whenever you're thinking about the Chiefs, it's always about the end of the season. It's never. I mean, yes, we're looking forward to this week 5 or week 6. For that regular season matchup, whatever it is.
Week 5.
Yeah, like that game will be exciting, and we'll be looking forward to that. But whenever we're talking about Bills versus Chiefs, it's always what happens when you meet them in the playoffs. Do you get by them, and do you get your way to the Super Bowl? And I've kind of taken notes from, like Bulldog has belabored this point in the afternoon show, comparing this Bills team to the 2007 Sabres, who had tons of expectations going in, and what was the whole season? It was about waiting for the Ottawa Senators, waiting for the Anaheim Ducks, and we're just focusing in on those two teams once playoff time comes around. And I'm trying not to do that with the Chiefs this year, although it's so easy to do it, and live in the moment, live in, what Sunday is against the Steelers, and not try to frame it as what does it mean? Are you better than Kansas City now as the season progresses? Because there are going to be memories made throughout the season, and I think that no matter what happens at the end of it, what's going to happen in the meat of it, in the middle, is going to be fun just because of how good the team is. Now, as to how the season ends, I'm still thinking about home field advantage. And that might be the tipping point for me as to decide whether or not I think that they can beat Kansas City in a potential AFC Championship rematch, or if that game is in Buffalo. I think the teams are that close where home field advantage could be the tipping point. And I think the betting lines on those two teams would tell you that, because I think the Bills are a 3.5-point underdog in week 5, and that's basically what you get for home field advantage. So that's
if you
where
take a look at the Bills' schedule overall, your point about home field advantage in week 5 and how that can go is absolutely right. It's critical. But here's the other part of this. So if you take a look at their schedule over the first until the bye week, okay, they play 6 games before the bye week. Only 1 division game. But
Miami week 2.
You might say, well, so the important games, so to speak, might come later, the division games. No. That's not how this team thinks anymore. The AFC games, 5 of the 6, 3 are against what I guess people would consider contenders in the AFC. I don't know, however people view Pittsburgh, but think about the non-division games. You got Miami, obviously critical in week 2, right? But Joe, you're talking in those first 6 games, Pittsburgh Steelers, Kansas City Chiefs, Tennessee Titans. You want home field advantage? You got to take care of business, man. You got to take care of business in those games. The difference between the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead versus the AFC Championship game in Orchard Park is the Bills having to beat out the Chiefs by record, actually beating them by record versus maybe tying and still being okay if they win that game. Whoever wins that game can afford to have the same record as the other team. Whoever loses that game has to literally beat out the team due to head-to-head. That's how critical this is. We're not trying to get ahead of ourselves. You have to make sure you're looking at the big picture. There was something that came out today. Brayton had emailed us. He said, hey, the Odyssey team wants season predictions, basically, and there's some questions we have to answer. One of the questions was, the Bills will miss the playoffs if. And I'm like, oh my God, right? But my answer was, if they try to treat every game like it's the Super Bowl, they have to keep the big picture in mind and understand that it's a week-to-week, everyday consistency type of situation. And I think they will under Sean McDermott. But those first 6 games are critical if you want that number 1 seed.
I think for sure, especially the Kansas City game as you headlined. But yeah, like the Pittsburgh game to me, like right off the bat, is the perfect game for this because they matter. They're good. It's not like a walkover. It's not like you're starting with Houston. Like I think you can still get a sense and a grasp on, is this team as good as they were last season? Do we have early signs of that? Because I'm not expecting any type of regression from the team overall. In fact, I think there really could be an ascension that they have on defense with their pass rush that could cause them to be a better overall unit than they even were last season. I just don't think the way the passing game evolved last season that they can come back down to earth enough to where the expectations of what we're talking about playing Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, about winning a Super Bowl, I don't think enough regression is possible to where not having those discussions is even warranted. So I love that they're starting with Pittsburgh. It's the perfect game for this. They are not, to me, this juggernaut that they've been at times over the past 15 years. But to me, they still rate enough to where if the Bills go into that game, and you mentioned this morning with Howard and Jeremy, like what could that game look like? Maybe, what did Jeremy call it, an arm's length game?
Yes.
Where like last year's Jets game, you're ahead by maybe 2 touchdowns the whole game. Scoreboard doesn't look like a blowout.
You feel like you're in control.
Yeah, you never feel like the result's in danger.
But at the end of the day, that Jets game opening week,
right,
they won by 10 when it felt like they should have won by 30.
Right. And what if that happens on Sunday, which is completely realistic? That just confirms that you're one step above those like AFC playoff contenders. Like I would put Pittsburgh in that category. The Chargers, I think New England and Miami rightfully can be put in that. Like how about the real AFC contenders for the conference, not just to make the playoffs? And to me, that's the level, that's the tier that the Bills are in. And I think that'll only be confirmed if they have that type of victory against Pittsburgh on Sunday.
803-0550. 888-550-2550. Does it matter anymore if people call like the 800? Do long distance? Do people actually pay
toll
for
free?
Like toll free anymore? Does that matter?
I've never experienced toll free. I've always been
You're
confused
too young to
by
know
what that
toll-free.
even is.
Oh
No.
my God!
I've given out the toll free number without knowing what toll free is.
This is our first moment of what will be many when I say I cannot believe how young you are and you did not know that, right? I mean,
did you think it'd
you
take
didn't even
13
know
minutes?
You didn't even know. You don't even know what a landline is. Probably. Did you
know
ever
what a
use a
landline-
landline?
Yeah, I did. I did use a landline.
I mean, we have one here. Obviously, there's one literally on the desk in the studio.
We have one in the boardroom in there too. So yeah.
But have you had one in your house?
Yes. Yeah, I had one growing up probably until like high school, but then we got rid of them for cell phones. But we had it really for like 5 years before we got rid of it, just without using it. Like it was just the line.
Have you ever used a
telemarketers called.
payphone, like out and about, like on the street corner, a payphone? Have you ever used one?
I don't think so. Like I've seen them, I know what they are, but I don't think I've ever used a payphone.
Most don't even work anymore. They might be standing there. It's like nostalgia.
Well, when's the last time you've used a payphone?
I mean, it's got to be.
Could it be pre me being born?
Yeah. Maybe no,
close?
maybe over 20 years ago, probably.
Okay.
I would say when I was in Florida working and driving around and doing some radio sales while I'm on the air and had to call somebody or whatever, got a pager, not a cell phone, had to call somebody. That would be the last time.
I don't want to force making you feel old on this show, but again, times like this might make it too hard to ignore.
No doubt about it. The Bills, by the way, what we want from you today, again, is how does the season end? 803-0550, 888-550-2550. Are the Bills going to be celebrating a Super Bowl championship? Are they going to get back to where they were last year and we say, man, you just can't get over Kansas City? However that looks, that's what we're looking for today. You can give us, how all of that kind of plays out in your mind when you think about big picture. The Bills are a trendy Super Bowl pick. It's a weird thing to say, but we heard this morning there was some sound from Pete Prisco who picked him. I believe Peter King picked him. I don't know if he picked him to win. He picked him to go in his Football Morning in America column. I have to look at that, but I know he picked him to go. And look, when Jeremy and Howard, they were talking about it this morning, when Pete Prisco says, people look at me like I'm crazy. No. No one's going to think you're crazy for picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Okay, every year I do Sal's Crystal Ball. I will have my column later this week. It usually comes out on Thursday before the opening regular season NFL game. I'm just telling people right now, I think I'm picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I think I am. I haven't nailed it down completely, and it scares the hell out of me, Joe, to do that. Because, first of all, there's already this, well, you're Sal Capaccio and you're a homer and you're on the sidelines and all that. I get it. Like, people can think what they want. I picked him to go to the AFC Championship game and lose to the Chiefs last year. That was my pick.
On the money.
And it happened. Now, granted, I also picked like the Denver Broncos to make the playoffs last year. That didn't happen. So I'm not doing the whole, oh my God, I knew. But look, I mean, we know this team is good. We know this team has a championship caliber roster. We know what their goal is. I'm going to be one of these people. Don't be surprised if on Thursday, when I have my season predictions, if you see me adding a picture on the website of Josh Allen celebrating somehow, because that's how I see the season ending.
Are you? I know, like you would be predicting it maybe. And I looked at Peter King. He had them losing to the Rams in the Super Bowl, but beating the Chiefs to get there. Like, are you mentally prepared for what that looks like if they even win it? Like, because
the entire thing, you mean?
Yeah, if they win the Super Bowl, I'm not even mentally prepared for that possibility. I know logistically it is possible. Like, they are third in Super Bowl odds. They were right there last season. They've got the quarterback for it. You've got every reason to believe that they absolutely could win the Super Bowl, even if you don't predict them to do it. No one would be stunned, I don't think, league-wide if it happened. And I just don't think I'm mentally prepared for even that day.
What team do you root for in any sport that has won a championship?
The closest I get to is Liverpool winning the English Premier League.
Okay, and that's out of the realm. It's not local. It's nothing you can celebrate here necessarily.
Right. There's nothing I can celebrate with the community for, because the community is an ocean away, literally.
So obviously, I'm a Yankees fan. I've experienced that. That's different, though. It's the Yankees. They're in New York City. They're not the Buffalo team. Like, I'm a champion for Buffalo sports. Heck, like, I'll root for all the college basketball teams here. I mean, I want them all to succeed and win. I want Buffalo to succeed in every sport. The closest any team really has come to that for me is Syracuse winning the national championship in 2003. I was there. Carmelo Anthony. I was in New Orleans. It was a party, and it's the famous story I've told on the air. Took a picture before smartphones. I got the scoreboard behind me. I'm crying in the picture. Mm-hmm. I go back. My wife gets the pictures developed. There's all sorts of different pictures from New Orleans that weekend that I'm like, oh my God, my wife's seeing these pictures. What's going on? I don't know what happened. And she stopped on one and said, I can't believe you cried. You didn't even cry at our wedding, right? That was like a funny moment in our early marriage at the time. But Joe, wow. I didn't know I'd be prepared for it that time. And I will tell you what it felt like was, this is so cool. It's amazing to be number one. Okay, now how do we do it next year? Like, you almost don't have time to actually take it in because you're so worried about losing the top spot immediately.
Right.
It's weird.
Then I would like to not fall into that mindset, which I think it could be very easy to once if something like that happens. To me, like, I almost am looking for reasons to not get sucked into the bias. You know, like, you're the guy in Buffalo. Of course you're going to pick the Bills to win the Super Bowl. But I think if I were anywhere else in the country and had no ties to Buffalo, I think they'd be the team I'd pick. And maybe a little bit is, like, they're trendy and they're new, and like you might want a little bit of a rooting interest. Who wants to root for the same team to go back to the Super Bowl year after year and win year after year? The Chiefs, I don't think, are near where the Patriots got on that level, but at some point, they're going to start to get a little stale. I think some fans around the league, casual football fans, in anywhere, California, might want to see, let's see someone new this year in the Super Bowl. Let's not see the same red uniforms time after time. And to me, like, the Bills are kind of like, they're the new kid on the block, right? Like, they've been down in the dumps for 20 years. They're now here. They're legitimately great. It's not a fluke that they're here. They have a quarterback that is as fun to watch as anybody in the league. Like, that would be the team I'd want to pick because you have every logical reason to think that they can do it. Mm-hmm. So if I were somewhere else, I think I would be picking the Bills, which is why I'm almost trying to convince myself of reasons not to do it because, again, you don't want to just be the Buffalo guy picking your team for everything.
That's exactly right.
I think you have enough reasons to do it and not feel like you're getting sucked into the bias.
803-0550, 888-550-2550. We'd like to have you engage with us here on this show. That's what we want to do. You could tweet us at Sal Sports, at Sneaky Joe Sports.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And also at Extra Point WGR, which is our official Twitter handle of the Extra Point Show. Now coming your way every single weekday, 10 to 12 here on WGR. Jay in Buffalo, let's start us off. How's this season end, Jay?
Morning, guys. How are you? And,
pretty good.
We're definitely excited for the season to kick off, and I'm like you, like everybody else. You know, we're from Buffalo, so you got that cautious, optimism. But honestly, man, how does it end? Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. It's time to party with the Lombardi, man. The parade from City Hall down Delaware Avenue all the way to Hurdle. Over 1 million people.
I think you're a week early on that. I think the Super Bowl's on Valentine's Day next year because of the extra week. That's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Hey, listen, we can still celebrate an AFC championship and then, the week in between and all that kind of stuff. Don't worry about it.
Look at. I think this team is stacked at every position. We're prime. It's 15-2. It's home field advantage. it's Josh Allen raising the trophy in that stadium in LA, man, and it's time for this town to go crazy. I mean, just look at that scene when the Bucks won the championship. That was crazy. Like all those people, like when they won that game, it was just I was thinking like, yo, that's gonna be what Riverworks looks like when like all those people are watching the Super Bowl. Like when we win it, like that parade is just gonna be crazy. Like we're the best team. We're the best team. Sometimes the best team doesn't always win, but we're the best team in football. We're in the Super Bowl.
All right, man. Thanks a lot for the call. Really appreciate it, Jay. Good way to start us off. That's a good prediction right there. Stefan up in Toronto, frequent caller on the Extra Point Show. My man, what's up?
Not too much, Sal. Great to hear you guys. Congrats on the new time slot and the new show.
No problem. Thank you.
I would love to hop on what your last caller was saying, but I just can't envision it in my mind. I can't picture it, and here's why. You look at Kansas City and you look at Buffalo and what they've done in the offseason. Buffalo improves this pass rush. What does Kansas City do? They improve and totally rebuild their offensive line. I understand they've got two rookies on the inside with Humphrey and Trey Smith via the draft, but they've countered our improved pass rush. Ultimately, what it comes down to me is, can Josh Allen be better than Patrick Mahomes? In my mind, I don't know if I can bring myself to see that, Sal. Once again, congrats on the new gig. Let me know your thoughts and have a good week.
Yeah, so I think that, Joe, Stefan, it really comes down to two teams. He's in the same boat as a lot of people, which is, yes, we have this great team here, but you got that Goliath out there in the Midwest in Kansas City, which kind of is like the New England was for the last 20 years for the Bills, but in a different manner.
I don't know that I think of it, though, as Allen needs to be better than Mahomes. I think if Josh Allen, and there are many ways to evaluate quarterback play, so just saying match him is pretty generic, but I think if Josh Allen just matches Patrick Mahomes on the season, in a game when they're faced head-to-head, all he's got to do is be that good. I don't think he has to be better, because going into the season, I think the Chiefs might not be getting enough credit for their overall roster. They did a lot to invest in that offensive line this season after getting torn to shreds in the Super Bowl by Tampa's pass rush. But I think the Bills have an overall better roster. And I think if Josh Allen matches Patrick Mahomes' play at the quarterback position, I think the Bills are a better team. I think overall, top to bottom, maybe that is still, I might want to couch that by saying if the pass rush does see a step up from last year to this year, because that's a very important part of that defense. And I think if they want to get back to that elite level of defensive play that they had 2 years ago, I think the pass rush might be the engine that does that. But I don't know that I see it as Allen has to be better than Mahomes. I think I just kind of see it as he has to match it. And if that happens, I would pick the Bills to beat the Chiefs.
Last year, the Chiefs started off with a big 34-20 win over the Texans. And then they kind of they had a 34-20 win also the Ravens, but they were not like this.
Didn't they have like 8 one-score games to end the season? Something like that?
Yeah, and I know some were because they were ahead and the other team, they kind of played some prevent, whatever. I get it. You could make the argument that the Chiefs played their best game of the year in that AFC Championship game, and the Bills played their worst game of the year in the AFC Championship game. You could make that argument. I agree with you. It's not about Josh being better than Patrick Mahomes, but he's got to be better than he was. There's no doubt about that. He's got to be better than he was in both Chiefs games, right? It's the other things that have to be better. And yeah, you look from top to bottom, the Chiefs are really top-heavy. They have a good roster. They have a really good roster. Of course they do. But I agree. I would take the Bills 1 through 53, maybe over anybody in this league, to be honest. And that's what's kind of carried the Bills through these 4 years of McDermott, and building the back end of the roster. And now the top end is stepping up, which, by the way, is why you're also getting a lot of trendy Josh Allen MVP picks.
Yeah, no, because if the team's success is there and he plays as well, if not even better than he did last season, he'll probably be the MVP. That's why, I think the formula is there. It's right there for him to get that award.
There's got to be certain boxes checked. Mm-hmm. The team would check certain boxes, and therefore you get to Josh Allen being able to do that. Nate in Williamsville, you're on the Extra Point Show with Sal and Joe. What's up?
Hey, guys. Happy kickoff week here. So I'm a believer that the Bills are making the Super Bowl this year, but it's going to be done because of a chip on their shoulder that continues to grow as the season progresses. I don't think we're going to get home field advantage. I think the Chiefs are going to edge us out in that regard. But between the cumulative effect of losing to them in the way we did last year, the expectations at that point being solely on the Chiefs to defend their home turf and go back to the Super Bowl. I think this Bills team, with the hurt that hit them last year, with largely the same roster, and to the point of them being better top to bottom, I believe talent-wise, they will take out the Chiefs in Kansas City in the AFC title game to go to the Super Bowl. And that's what I would love to see. I think all the other points you make are spot on. Allen is probably among the front runners for MVP. And last thought before I turn it over to you guys, I just had this thought today. How awesome, I love the running backs we've got, but how awesome would it be as just a Bills fan to have a guy like Fred Jackson in the backfield on this offense? It hit me today that he would have just been such a perfect blend for this offense and how he played. So anyway, looking forward to a great season. Appreciate you guys.
I will tell you that at training camp a few times, Matt Breida looked like Fred Jackson because he wears 22 and he has the same body stature, if you will.
Yeah.
Fred's a little thicker, but they had the same mannerisms. And a couple times I told a couple other media members, doesn't that look like Fred Jackson out there?
Yeah. It's funny that Nate says that because all off season, when I was thinking about like if the Bills were going to add a running back, the guy in my head I had for that was CJ Spiller.
Interesting.
He would turns with Fred.
In this particular offense. Yeah, he would. He would be something. Speaking of the roster, I want to go through that in a minute, but let's take one more call before we take a timeout. And I'll ask Joe. We'll look at some of the things that we are confident in and some of the things that we are concerned about. But we'll do that after the next timeout. First, let's go to Don in Cheektowaga. What's up, Don?
Sal and Joe. Good afternoon. All right. Good morning.
Good morning. That's all right.
Yeah.
Man, what a huge week this is. It's like Christmas week. What you guys have been talking about has been spot on. I'm going to say this, though. I'm not really looking towards the end yet. There's a couple concerns because you guys were talking about concerns for me. But this roster is loaded. Josh is in a great position. From the front office all the way down to the bottom, this team is really, really stacked, and I've never felt so confident. The things that concern me, I will be honest, the COVID situation. That is such a wild card this year. What is going to happen with that, with some of the unvaccinated players and what have you? The last thing we want to see is on a Wednesday, one of our guys goes, and then he's out 5 days. That could really throw some. And then injuries, of course, that's what we look at. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news at all, but if this team stays healthy and no hiccups, there's no doubt we could be playing Kansas City. And, Kansas City's got the same chip. They got their asses kicked against Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl. And what did the Bills do this offseason? We did what Tampa Bay did to beat, what Tampa Bay did to beat Kansas City. That was to get to Patrick Mahomes. The defensive line, I love it this year. We got some new young guys. We got those veterans with, Addison and Hughes, of course. I think we're going to have a great year. And, Sal, like yourself, I moved down to Tampa Bay back in 2003. Moved down to Tampa, a Buffalo guy. They won a cup. They won they won the Super Bowl. It was disgusting.
Heck, the Rays were going to World Series, right? Come on,
yeah,
right?
Rays are loaded. Let's be honest.
Then college football, UCF, USF back then. It was just it's a reason they're calling them. I don't even like it. They call it like Champa Bay down there, and I want to throw up.
Oh, it's the worst.
It is, and there would be nothing like a Super Bowl or a championship, a Stanley Cup in the city of Buffalo. There would be nothing like it. We would shut down for I already know I'd be off of work for weeks because it would be. I would be when we made the playoffs. When Miami and the Cincinnati thing happened, I was bawling, and I remember my son looking at me. He goes, "Daddy, what's wrong?" I go, "The Bills are going to the playoffs." I said, "That's why." And we don't know. When you have that Buffalo blood, like Sal, I know you're a Yankee guy. It's not the same.
No.
You didn't grow up in New York, so you grew up in Buffalo. We're Buffalo people, and to see a Super Bowl, I can't even explain it. But, hey, I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it. All right. I want you to put your thinking cap on, Joe, because when we come back, I'm going to ask you some of the concerns you have on the roster and some of the things you are super confident in on this roster. We're taking your phone calls today. It's the debut, inaugural edition, if you will, of the weekday Extra Point Show here on WGR Sports Radio 550. I'm Sal Capaccio. He's Sneaky Joe DiBiase. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll take more of your phone calls here on WGR.
We feel good about their status. At this point, I don't think as we sit here today before practice, anything can happen, but I don't think we're planning to rule anyone out for week 1 at this point.
All right, that is Bills GM Brandon Beane. That was right after cut downs last week to the final 53 when he gave some really encouraging news, Joe, on some of the injured players. And we're talking about Isaiah McKenzie, Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace, Taron Johnson, and even Harrison Phillips. And I've said this a few times since he said that. I mean, how about Harrison, man? That looked like it could have been, oh my God, Here we go again. And not even ruled out for week 1. That's great.
I wonder, do you think he can be active week 1?
Possibly. I just don't know. I think there's a reason they kept 5 defensive tackles, by the way.
Yeah.
And that might be just because, hey, we're not ready yet to say he's full go.
Right.
Make sure we have enough guys. We like to rotate.
Well, they did on many games last year, including the 2 playoff games. I was looking back for something last week on this. They were dressing 5 defensive tackles on game days. They were dressing 9 defensive linemen in total, so maybe that's a better way of looking at it.
Right.
Because obviously the Bills kept 6 defensive ends this year.
And they have 11 defensive linemen on the active roster right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, even if...
You're going to have at least 1 inactive from that group. There's almost no doubt about it.
10 is 1 more than you were keeping last year.
Right.
I think with F.A. Obata and Boogie Basham's positional versatility to kick inside if they need to,
right,
that will help stomach keeping one more on the game day roster than last year. But yeah, I guess what's the point of this? That if Harrison Phillips is getting even close, they've got the bodies for him to not have to rush back.
No doubt. I feel really good for him personally because that didn't look good in Chicago when he got hurt, but hopefully he's going to be just fine and able to get on the field sooner rather than later. I'll ask Joe for his concerns and confidence on the roster, but first let's go to Mark in Tonawanda. Hi, Mark. You're on WGR.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome.
What a week. I retired from golf yesterday on Labor Day. I just want to get that out there first.
You retired?
But, I'm retired, Sal. I couldn't. It wouldn't let me hit. It was a scramble. I used nothing but my putter the whole trip.
Now listen.
Not good.
How many times have we all said, I'm never playing this game again, and then you go back and play?
The next day.
Yeah, you know what? It's up to my grandfather. He'll make the call.
All right, man. What do you got for me on the Bills?
But yeah, so I think I'm expecting a monster year from Tremaine Edmonds because not only, it's a contract year, but we'll see. That last game, I just feel like even all year that the linebackers against tight ends, Milano's injury didn't help, but I think a good, a way better defensive line group frees up a guy like Tremaine Edmonds to just play. I think, they were asking him to do way too much because of the lack of pass rush. And I think they'll be able to focus on covering tight ends and just stopping the run. And I'm just expecting a huge year from Tremaine Edmonds. I'm going to hang up and listen. Thanks for having me on.
You know who agrees with your assessment, Mark? Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and Leslie Frazier. They have told us repeatedly and have hinted, or whether they've said it outright or not, we all know what their indication is. And really, the money is... They put their money where their mouth is by giving him his 5th-year option, by the way.
Yep.
The indication is, with Star back... and everybody healthy, Tremaine can be more like Tremaine that we expect.
You'll have, hopefully, a healthy Matt Milano next to him, too, because he didn't have him for a couple games. Edmonds dealt with his own injuries at the beginning of last season. I just wonder if there needs to be another step forward in his game to warrant that monster contract. Or even, it doesn't have to be monster. He doesn't have to be the highest-paid linebacker in the league. Many times we've thought Bills players at different positions were going to be one of the highest paid players of their position, and then they re-sign on a pretty good, valuable deal. Tre'Davious White, Deion Dawkins come to mind for me right off the top with that. But now that you have the quarterback contract, now that you have the $40+ million quarterback contract on the books, maybe it gets harder for guys like Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver, these highly drafted players that are good, even really good, but maybe they have to be great, and they have to take their game one more notch up to be able to warrant that big extension. I think Edmonds is likely for that. I think, like you said, the team is invested in him. The team trusts that's coming. And I think a lot of the struggles that the linebacking core maybe had at the beginning of last season was the health. Edmonds and Milano both banged up, and not having Star Lotulelei there. Yeah, he has to have a step up, as you put it. And that step up needs to come in the form of more game-changing plays, big plays, impactful plays. That's what you're missing from Tremaine Edmonds right now. Where are the flash plays? That's right. The impact player. If you're going to draft a linebacker, 16th overall, he's got to be a really impactful linebacker. I mean, it's just, and especially a middle linebacker. You're putting him in the middle of your defense.
to do that. Tremaine Edmonds, part of a linebacking core that I've been saying since training camp and even before, is very deep, and I believe that because you're looking at, yes, Tyler Matakevich is more of a special teams player. He can play defense. We saw him make some plays in the preseason. A.J. Klein, a defensive player of the week last year for what he did after a slow start. Terrell Dodson can play all three positions. Really, all these guys can. Andre Smith has looked fantastic, I think. So I think that's a really good spot to start here, Joe, for me to ask you at least, what is your biggest confidence in this roster this year? When you look at the roster or the team, just the team in general, where's your biggest confidence lie in the Buffalo Bills in 2021?
It is definitely, for me, the passing game in totality. Because just the three elements, everything you need is working. You've got Brian Daboll that creates a scheme and a system to help wide receivers get open. You have wide receivers in the first place that are great separators on their own in ISO man coverage. Stephon Diggs is getting open more often than most receivers in the league. And Emmanuel Sanders is getting open more than most receivers in the league. And Cole Beasley is great at it in the short to intermediate routes. So I think the talent they have at receiver, the scheme that just fits their strong suits that Brian Daboll has designed, and Allen's progression as a passer. Like I don't know. It's 1 year, and I think you might think there could be some regression there, but I think he fixed it. I think working with Jordan Palmer year after year, the thing he said last year about digitally mapping his throwing motion and changing his release point of the ball, I feel like the guy's figured it out. I think that his accuracy problems are maybe just fixed. And if that's the case, with him being as comfortable as he is in the NFL in this offense, I don't see the passing game regressing at all. You've got all three elements you had, and that is my biggest confidence of the team. And it's the most important thing I think you want to have.
Yeah, I don't know what a regression would look like and how it comes about unless
it'd have to be injury. The
because
only thing
there's no. I mean, how does he regress with the exact same cast around him?
If Brian
and
Daboll,
maybe even better,
right? If Brian Daboll had left for the Chargers,
yes, then you have this question.
That would be a huge story going into Week 1.
Yes, it would.
What's it going to look like without Brian Daboll? But he's here.
It's why Josh Allen again is a trendy MVP pick. But Chris in Maryland, I think, wants to jump on this a little bit. Hi, Chris. You're on WGR.
Hey, how you doing, Sal?
Good. Hey, good to talk to you again, man. It's been a season, I guess, right?
Yes, sir. Hey, I don't know. I didn't talk to you at the last game. I was trying to get in, but of course, the lines were full. And I told my son, I can always tell him, I said, all people for me too. So now we're back.
We're back, buddy. Good to hear from you again. What's on your mind?
All right. So my biggest concern would be the depth at quarterback. And, like, as far as the nickel, like, Serene Mills is pretty decent, even though he plays a big nickel. He's a decent quarterback there, but to have him on the outside is a little scary. My biggest thing that I'm confident about, my other point, is the overall depth of the team itself. It's really unique, and I was explaining to my son in the preseason, one thing I like about watching is you can see the depth every team has by the second and third string they put in. No, you don't want to put a whole lot of into the basketball, but people are fighting for jobs. And if you could watch a team and you can see how they perform, and those that are fighting for jobs, they're going to play hard, regardless if it's vanilla, offense or defense or what have you. And that's the one thing it just stuck out the way we put that kind of whipping on the Bears. And I was telling my son, I said, you got to look, they still got some of the starters in there, and we got second and third string in there. And we're just wearing them out. That overall depth is very comforting, especially going into this year. I'm excited, man. And the added addition of Breida, I think, is really going to spark our run game. One more thing, I noticed that with Singletary, I was impressed the way he's looked, because I was really down on him. But I noticed that we ran the ball really well with him in the preseason, the little times that they did out of a zone run scheme. I wonder if they're going to do that some more.
I think he's looked pretty good in the preseason. By the way, say hi to your son, man. Always good to talk to you, and I know that you guys are big Bills fans down there.
Oh, absolutely. And we catch it down here, but we handle our business. We got to do it for the Mafia, man.
All right, Chris. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate the phone call. I'll get to our concerns in a minute. We'll take a timeout before we do that, but my biggest confidence is a broader picture of what you talked about. It's the coaching staff. This team will never be, I'm not going to say never be outcoached. They've been outcoached. They'll never be not prepared, right? I mean, I think I have supreme confidence in Sean McDermott as a head coach, Brian Daboll is an offensive coordinator. Leslie Frazier is a defensive coordinator. Are there times where you say, I question the play calling? Yes. Are there times you say, I question the fourth down or the challenge? Of course. But I think we have a body of work over 4 years now where the Bills are pretty much going to have let's go back to the old Charlie Weiss saying back in the day when he got hired by Notre Dame, and he was wrong, but this time I think it's right. A schematical advantage going into every game. They're going to have a preparation advantage. They're going to have a coaching advantage going into almost every game because that's who they are. And that's my confidence in this team that Sean McDermott will not let this team rest. They're going to be every game ready to play, prepared to play. Does that mean they win every game? Of course not. I think this coaching staff is fantastic.
I do too. I think one of my concerns, and I don't have many, I'm almost forcing it to even come up with one, is kind of spinning off of Chris's call. So maybe we'll get to that when we...
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take a timeout. Look at the roster. We're asking for how the season ends in your mind today. If you want to give us a call at 803-0550, or if you want to touch on your biggest confidence or biggest concern with the Buffalo Bills in 2021. I'll have my biggest concern, so will Joe when we come back on WGR.
Watching how we've evolved every year, where you're at offensively, defensively, special teams, and then obviously as an overall team. So, and trying to stay as balanced as we can. It's never exactly how you want it to be, but you try and stay as balanced as you can through all three phases as well.
Bills head coach Sean McDermott, he will speak to the media as part of his weekly media day, press briefing, if you will, today at noon. Normally that's going to be on Wednesdays, but because of the Labor Day, the Bills, holiday, the Bills have readjusted the schedule a little bit this week. It happens every year. So he'll do that today at noon. And then they'll have practice at 12:30. Sal Capaccio, Sneaky Joe DiBiase. First hour of the show almost in the books, and it goes by quick, Joe. So quick that there's so much that we want to get to. We can't today. We will still get to a lot more, believe me. But we'll have a lot more throughout the week that we can get to all this stuff.
I feel like it's gone well.
Yeah, I think it's gone really well. We've had some really good calls. Yeah. And we invite people to call 803-0550, 888-550-2550. We are on Twitter. Our official Twitter handle for the show is ExtraPointWGR. That's at ExtraPointWGR. All right, concerns with this team. What is your biggest concern with the Buffalo Bills in 2021?
Man, it's so minor. But because I'm almost forcing it. I almost wanted to just say, I don't really have any. I think it's reasonable to say that. With the way they've constructed the roster, the coaching staff, the quarterback, there's not much to pick from. I am a little concerned about the depth at corner because...
Like Chris said.
Yeah, I like Levi Wallace. I've always kind of felt like I've been on the defensive with Levi Wallace. Tre'Davious White, we know, is a shutdown number one corner. But behind Wallace right now, all you've got is Dane Jackson. And I think a lot of, Thad Brown, I know, for one, was expecting him to kind of take the bull by the horns and take over that number two cornerback position. And who knows, maybe at some point in the season that actually does happen. But to this point, it hasn't. And on the surface, you've got Levi Wallace on a 1-year vet minimum contract that came back here after he could have left. Mm-hmm. They've got a second-year, seventh-round guy who has not played much in the league. When he played great, especially that Jet game last year in the regular season. But he's really your only depth right now. I think I've heard you say you think Saran Neal is maybe the next man up after that to play outside corner.
It would have to be, and he's not really an outside guy. They want him to play inside.
So, again, it's a minor worry, but I think across the roster, the depth at corner to me is the one thing that I'm looking at going into the year.
Mine is related to that because that could show up if this thing doesn't happen, and that is the pass rush. For all of the resources the Bills spent on the pass rush, and I think Greg Rousseau has looked really good in camp and preseason. I do. But for all the resources they've spent on the pass rush, not only their two top picks this year, first and second round, Rousseau and Basham, but also F.A. Obata, and thinking back to last year, A.J. Epinesa, and the leap that he's expected to take, so much so that you're willing to trade Bam Johnson and get rid of some of that depth.
Yep.
I still want to make sure and know what that looks like. Are they going to get to the quarterback better?
Right.
And if they don't, then what you just said comes even more into play.
Yeah, and who's going to do it? Like I think Brandon Beane almost approached how did he approach pass rush this offseason? It was almost like as a volume shooter. Let me just throw 5 darts at the wall, and one of them is going to be a bullseye. Like if I spend a first-round pick, if I spend a second-round pick, I spent a second-round pick last year, spent a big free agent contract last year, Mario Addison, eventually you're going to hit on one of these guys. And I think after the preseason that Gregory Rousseau had, you can be pretty optimistic that he might be the leader in the clubhouse. Like if somebody breaks out, it's going to be that guy. But you need somebody. You need to develop a 4-man pass rush so that you don't have to send blitzes every time you want to put pressure on a quarterback.
And for the offensive coordinator to say, go block that guy.
Yeah.
He could wreck this third down, right? There's got to be a guy. And I hope that's Rousseau. It could be anybody. I hope it's anybody, but it could be Rousseau.
And we talk about the end position mostly for that. It could be interior. Because if Latulele coming back does kind of free up Ed Oliver a little bit more, maybe a little bit less on his plate to have to eat up blocks on the interior and just be like, hey, go get him. You know, just do a little swim move around the guard and worry about penetrating into the pocket and pushing the pocket back and making it easier for your ends. I think one guy that we don't often talk about because he plays a different position to having a more sustained pass rush this season is Ed Oliver really being a force up the middle.
Agreed. He is, we talked about Tremaine earlier. Ed Oliver has to have a step up in his game and more splash plays as well. 1 hour down, 1 to go. We've focused a lot on the macro, and we invite you to, what does the season look like, your concerns, how does it end, your confidence. We got to focus more on the micro when we come back. There is a big storyline in Pittsburgh that hasn't been talked about a ton, but it's getting a lot of play today, and it could be something that really impacts this game on Sunday. We'll have that and a lot more when we come back for the second hour of the Extra Point Show with Sal Capaccio and Joe DiBiase on WGR.